Hello, hi. In this box, I've got 10 kitchen tools under $20 that can make you a better cook. Also in this box is the one inexpensive kitchen tool I'm never using again. Let's get into it. First up on my list is a microplane. Kind of a confusing name because it sounds like a toy plane, but it is in fact a kitchen tool. It's basically a little baby grater that gets you really delicate, tiny shavings of whatever you use it on. And I think every home cook should have one of these for a couple reasons. First, it is hands down the best tool for zesting citrus. Your lemons, limes, grapefruits, oranges. Unlike a standard grater, you get all of the flavorful essential oils that live in the peel, but none of the bitter white pith underneath. And if you're not using citrus zest in your cooking, it's such an easy way to upgrade your food. It adds pep and a bright, zingy citrus flavor to so many things, from roasted vegetables to hummus to desserts to vinaigrettes. You can grate larger nuts like Brazil nuts or cashews onto a salad. I also like using this for grating fresh nutmeg, lemongrass. You can even use this for ginger or garlic. But if you do use this for ginger or garlic, it is gonna turn into more of like a pulp or a puree. So if you're looking for more of a mince, I recommend a medium grater like this. This is kind of tool 1A on the list. This is so great for fresh ginger and garlic and even fresh turmeric. It works much quicker than mincing everything by hand, so you save time when you're cooking. And if you make any of my recipes, you know how often I use ginger and garlic, so I really love this thing. This next item might seem like overkill to some people, but I swear by it, a digital scale. This has made me a better cook in so many ways. So first off, very useful for baking because it's just a lot more accurate to measure by weight than by volume. So if you're measuring milk or flour or sugar, you're gonna get much more precise results if you use one of these, because we all use measuring cups differently. And even small variations in baking can be the difference between your brownies tasting great and your brownies tasting gross. Even if you don't bake very often, there are just a lot of everyday ingredients that are so much easier to measure on a scale than to try to figure out how they work in measuring cups. Fresh herbs, for instance, do you pack them in tightly? Do you pack them in loosely, somewhere in the middle? It's a lot easier to just put them on a scale in a bowl. Also, certain nuts like walnuts, hard to fit in a measuring cup, and mushrooms. I don't even know where to start. How do you measure mushrooms? I really don't know. This is a serious question that I'm asking. A scale is also really useful if you want even portions of something so that they cook evenly. So if you're making some sort of bread or fritters, definitely use a measuring scale instead of trying to eyeball it or use a tablespoon measure. The last reason I love using a scale has nothing to do with cooking and everything to do with cleaning, which I hate. I hate washing dishes. And so instead of using 6 different dry measuring cups and 1 liquid measuring cup when I'm cooking or baking, I get to just put everything in one bowl on my scale. I hit the tare button to reset it to 0 every time I add a new ingredient, and it works so much better. Speaking of precision, the next thing on my list is an oven thermometer. Have you had your oven calibrated? If not, this is a must. For instance, in my last apartment in Brooklyn, my oven was off by 100 degrees Fahrenheit. 100 degrees. That is enormous, but also not that uncommon. So it was only once I started using one of these that I realized, oh, that's why my cookies and cakes are not turning out as I intended, and that's why my roasted vegetables are basically steaming instead of browning. So get yourself one of these. Next up is a citrus squeezer. I use a lot of citrus in my cooking. It does so many wonderful things. It makes heavy foods taste brighter, it makes spicy foods taste less intense, and it makes bitter foods taste, well, less bitter. I guess if you have freakishly strong hands, you can just use those hands to juice your limes and lemons, but for the rest of us, this thing is gonna get out so much more juice. This is particularly useful when you're making a recipe that needs a lot of citrus, like if you're making a salsa or guacamole with lime juice, or a lemon cake that needs a lot of lemon juice, you're gonna definitely save time with this. I recommend getting a stainless steel one like this instead of an enameled one. I used to have one of those, it started to chip, and I don't know about you, but I don't really want enamel chips in my food. Oh, and just be sure to put the citrus fruit in the right way, otherwise everyone will roast you. The next thing I want to show you is this silicone spatula. This is one of those things that doesn't seem that exciting or useful until you actually start to use it a lot. It bends and flexes in a way that a standard wooden spoon or metal spatula can't. Kind of like the difference between your body in your 20s and your 30s. Flexi flex, no flex. What that means is they're really good at getting into all of the corners of your pan, as well as getting out all of the food from your skillet, your bowl, or your blender. Plus, they're really easy to clean and actually heat resistant up to 550 degrees Fahrenheit. So if you accidentally let your spoon rest in a big pot of hot soup, it's not going to melt immediately. I like both this flat edge one and the spoonula to mix between a spoon and a spatula, which is particularly useful when you are trying to get everything out of a food processor or a blender. I also want to give a special shout out to the pancake spatula. Probably not essential for most home cooks, but I did test my vegan pancake recipe upwards of 3 dozen times, and this baby won out every time. So if you're a pancake fiend, definitely get this one. Up next, we have a Y-shaped peeler. I prefer this to the standard swivel vegetable peeler because the blade is wider, so you get to peel more in once. You cover more surface area, which means you're gonna peel your vegetables quicker, so you save time. I think it's also more ergonomic. It's easier to hold, especially when you're peeling sturdy things like butternut squash or sweet potatoes. I feel like you just get more of a natural motion and a smoother motion than with the standard peeler. I feel like you have to kind of contort your body when you use this more, and it's certainly a lot harder when you're using it on a sturdy vegetable. I also like using a wide peeler to make beautiful carrot ribbons or zucchini ribbons because they make eating salads so much more fun and exciting. Also, it's a great way to get your picky kids or your picky partners behind the camera to eat their vegetables. I do want to mention brands real quick. This is probably the most popular one among chefs. It's the Kuhn Rikon model. I actually prefer this OXO one though. It's about 4 times heavier than this one, which means it's sturdier. It has a better grip. It even has these little built-in grippies. And I feel like when I'm peeling especially tough things like broccoli stalks or again, butternut squash or sweet potato, I have a lot more control. I don't feel like I'm going to slip and accidentally peel my fingers along with the vegetables. So this is my preference, but I think either of these is gonna do a better job than a standard peeler. Now it's time to discuss the Humble Sheet Pan. I can't believe it fit in the box so snugly like that. This is on my list because it can do so many things really well. You can toast nuts in the oven, you can roast vegetables on it, you can make a casual sheet cake, you can bake cookies on it, you can toast bakery bread on it, and you can even make an entire sheet pan dinner on this. I really like this one from the Nordic Ware brand. It's 100% aluminum, so it conducts heat really well, and it's not going to get warped after a few uses. This handheld mandolin is one of my favorite tools for several reasons. You can get paper thin, even slices of shallots, onions, garlic, but also you can turn sturdy vegetables into these delicate feathery wisps. And if you've ever tried to cut a vegetable evenly and thinly, you know it takes some time, and this thing is lightning fast. I prefer the handheld version over a traditional mandolin for a few reasons. One, the traditional versions are quite large and clunky and a little difficult for beginners to use. Plus, a professional one is gonna run you upwards of like $100. But this one takes up very little space, very easy to use, and inexpensive. But if you care about your fingers, please wear a cut-resistant glove when you use a mandolin. It is very easy to cut your fingers otherwise. Let's talk about this little guy, a bench scraper. These were originally designed for bakers, but they're so useful for home cooks for many reasons. I use mine to scrape crumbs off my cutting board when I'm being a little messy, to transfer vegetables from my cutting board straight into a hot pan, and to just help with mise en place and make everything move smoother. You could use a knife to scrape up everything, but you might cut yourself and you definitely will dull your knife that way. Some models of these bench scrapers even come with ruled markings at the bottom, which is useful if you want to avoid looking like a weirdo who uses a measuring tape in the kitchen. Before we get to my last recommendation, let's talk about kitchen tools you shouldn't buy. My simple rule is that if a kitchen tool can do just one thing, and that one thing can be done by a different multi-purpose tool that I already own, I don't buy it. An example of this tool I think we'd all agree on is this banana slicer. Yes, it slices a banana very quickly, but you can slice a banana quickly with a knife. Also, this takes up valuable drawer space and is annoying to clean. My hot take is that a garlic press is no different. It promises to mince garlic quicker than a knife, but honestly, it does a terrible job. A lot of the garlic gets stuck in here, and it is incredibly difficult and annoying to clean. Trust me, I know. I've tried to use one of these many times, and it still sucks. So leave this at the store or in your online shopping basket and just use the grater I showed you earlier or mince your garlic by hand. And I know some of you are going to disagree with me and think the garlic press is great, so if you do, Let me know in the comments below. The last tool I want to talk about is something you don't actually see in most of my YouTube videos, and that's a magnetic whiteboard. Okay, so technically this isn't a cooking tool, but it is a kitchen tool, if that makes sense. I use this to make grocery lists and to make notes of ingredients I'm running low on. It's also useful in the middle of cooking. If I want to jot down a note, but my hands are covered in sauce and I don't want to touch my phone, I can just use this. It's always in the same place and it's never in the way. And during the week, I use my whiteboard to remind myself of various things, whether it's to defrost the tofu or to actually eat the kale I prepped on Sunday. And the only reason you don't see this in my videos very often is because it can be a little distracting in the background, and I would prefer you focus on my baby animal calendar. You can find a link to this whiteboard and all of the other kitchen tools I mentioned in this video in the description box below. If there are any other useful kitchen tools under $20 that I missed, let us know in the comments below. Bye!